In the golden afternoon light at Buckingham Palace, a quiet tension was about to explode into chaos. A single figure hidden among the tourists would soon ignite a confrontation that no one could have predicted, and one brave guard would stand alone against it. What happened next left the entire crowd stunned in silence. Before we dive into this incredible story, comment below where you're watching from. Hit that like button and make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another powerful moment like this one. The late afternoon sun draped Buckingham Palace in a soft golden hue, casting long shadows across the ancient courtyard. Amid the gentle murmurs of visiting tourists, guard Nathan Carter stood immovable, his scarlet uniform and polished metals reflecting the waning light. Every detail about him spoke of duty and quiet resilience. Yet beneath the ceremonial dignity, Nathan's finely tuned instincts, shaped by decades of military service, stirred with unease. Something wasn't right. His eyes, trained over countless tours and conflict zones, subtly scanned the crowd. Amid the colorful throng, a single figure stood out. The man's posture was too calculated, his gaze too sharp, and though he feigned casual interest in the palace's grandeur, Nathan recognized the unmistakable signs of someone assessing defenses, not admiring history. A tension coiled in Nathan's gut, the kind of warning that had saved his life more times than he could count. Still, bound by tradition and training, he remained at attention, his expression unreadable to the hundreds of unaware visitors around him. While cameras clicked and children laughed, Nathan Carter silently prepared for the possibility that danger was closer than anyone realized. Among the flow of eager tourists snapping photos and admiring the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, one man moved differently. Guard Nathan Carter noticed it immediately. A calculated rhythm beneath a mask of casualness. The stranger's steps were too measured, his pauses too deliberate. While others marveled at the historic walls, he seemed far more interested in angles, sightlines, and the patrol patterns of the guards. His expensive coat was meticulously tailored, but it did little to hide the heavy scuffed boots beneath, the kind favored by those who valued function over fashion. To most passers-by, he would have appeared harmless, perhaps even distinguished. But to Nathan, trained through decades of service in volatile corners of the world, the man radiated tension. His clean-shaven face and neatly combed hair suggested a conscious effort to blend in, too conscious, in fact. It was a deception Nathan had seen many times before, in places where survival depended on noticing the slightest inconsistency. The stranger drifted closer, pretending to admire the palace's stonework, yet his sharp eyes never truly lingered on the architecture. They moved constantly, assessing, measuring. Nathan remained motionless, bound by his duty, yet every sense was heightened, every instinct on alert. Deep down, he knew this was not a tourist. This was a threat, and he was coming closer. As the stranger inched closer, a subtle shift in the atmosphere seemed to ripple across the courtyard. The cheerful chatter of tourists began to falter, replaced by an uneasy quiet that only the most perceptive could detect. Nathan Carter, standing tall and silent, caught every nuance. The man finally spoke, his voice low and carefully controlled, yet carrying an unmistakable undercurrent of contempt. "All this pageantry," the stranger said with a faint sneer, gesturing toward the palace. "All this pretense of power." Nearby tourists, initially intrigued, began to exchange uncertain glances. What had seemed a harmless conversation now bore the chilling tone of something far more sinister. The man's words grew sharper, laced with venom. He railed against tradition, against monarchy, against the very idea of a civilization built on heritage and honor. Though he spoke quietly, his carefully chosen words cut through the courtyard like a blade. They were not the careless ramblings of a discontented man. They were rehearsed, deliberate, the product of an ideology rooted in bitterness. From the corner of his eye, Nathan noticed an elderly gentleman, Arthur Hale, standing stiffly nearby. Arthur wore the insignia of a decorated veteran, and like Nathan, he recognized the danger brewing beneath the stranger's polished exterior. Without drawing attention, Arthur subtly maneuvered a group of young tourists toward safety. his movements careful and composed. Still bound by protocol, Nathan remained motionless, yet inside every fiber of his being was alert. He knew too well, from old battlefields and darker days, that words spoken with such hatred were often the prelude to action. The tension in the courtyard had thickened to something almost tangible, hanging in the air like a gathering storm. Nathan Carter, steadfast at his post, monitored the stranger with unwavering focus. Every muscle in Nathan's body was coiled. Ready, though, outwardly, he remained the very image of ceremonial composure. Then, without warning, the stranger's right hand began a slow, deliberate movement toward the inside of his coat. To the average onlooker, it might have seemed innocent. Perhaps the man was reaching for a phone or a wallet. But to Nathan, whose life had depended on reading the smallest gestures in hostile environments, the intent was clear and unmistakable. Time seemed to slow. The stranger's fingers curled around something hidden beneath his coat, the unmistakable profile of a firearm beginning to emerge. A cold sheen of sunlight caught the steel, flashing a brief, lethal glint. The weapon was not brandished wildly, but rather drawn with a calm, chilling deliberateness, the mark of someone well-trained and fully committed to violence. Across the courtyard, Arthur Hale's eyes widened. The old veteran's hand hovered near an emergency call button, discreetly mounted on a pillar, his body language betraying years of hard-earned instinct. He moved without panic, pressing the button that would silently summon the police. But he knew help would not arrive in time to prevent what was about to unfold. Nathan remained perfectly still, bound by duty and discipline. But within his mind, calculations raced, trajectories, angles, possibilities. He had seconds, perhaps less, to act, and he knew that hesitation could mean tragedy for everyone within those ancient courtyard walls. In the heartbeat that followed, Nathan Carter moved. It was not the slow, deliberate pace of ceremonial protocol, but the lightning-fast precision of a seasoned combat veteran. Without breaking posture, without even a hint of panic, Nathan's white-gloved hand snapped forward with fluid, practiced efficiency. Before the stranger could fully clear his weapon from beneath his coat, Nathan seized the gun with a grip honed over countless hours of training in far harsher environments than a London courtyard. His movements were a seamless blend of strength and finesse, the kind that came only from real-world experience, the kind that once meant the difference between life and death on battlefields far from home. With a sharp, almost imperceptible twist, Nathan disarmed the man, the weapon slipping from its owner's grasp as if it had simply evaporated. In a single continuous motion, Nathan ejected the magazine, caught it midair, and cleared the chambered round. The loose bullet arced through the sunlight before falling harmlessly onto the courtyard stones with a faint metallic chime. No wasted motion, no unnecessary force. Just the exact, decisive actions of a man who had prepared his entire career for a moment like this. Tourists gasped audibly, some dropping their cameras in shock. A mother clutched her child tightly. Across the square, Arthur Hale watched with silent admiration. Nathan had neutralized the threat before panic could even set in, all while maintaining the stoic bearing expected of a royal guard. In the space of a few seconds, what could have been a catastrophe was averted, and the dignity of centuries-old tradition was preserved through sheer, disciplined courage. The disarmed stranger, now stripped of his weapon and his intentions laid bare, stumbled backward in stunned disbelief. His carefully rehearsed plans had unraveled in mere seconds, undone by a man he had dismissed as merely ceremonial. Rage contorted his features, and in a desperate attempt to regain control, he lunged toward Nathan Carter with reckless fury. But Nathan was ready. With the same fluid precision that had neutralized the weapon, he stepped forward and delivered a single decisive strike. Using the rear sight of the captured pistol as a pivot, Nathan brought it down sharply against the bridge of the man's nose. There was a sickening crack, the unmistakable sound of cartilage giving way, followed by a sudden gush of blood that stained the man's once pristine coat. The would-be attacker cried out, clutching his face as he staggered back, his bravado collapsing into pain and humiliation. The tourists, frozen moments earlier, now gasped aloud, realizing they had witnessed not just a confrontation, but the swift and unyielding application of real-world training. Across the square, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. Within moments, armed officers from the Metropolitan Police flooded the courtyard, their movements sharp and efficient. They fanned out, securing the area with the calm authority of men and women who had drilled for this exact kind of emergency. Nathan remained steadfast, the pistol now safely disabled and held low in his gloved hand. He gave a concise, clear report to the first officer who approached, his tone calm, his breathing steady. Even after facing a life-threatening attack, Guard Nathan Carter had never once broken discipline, a living testament to the enduring strength behind the traditions he served. As the police secured the wounded attacker, Nathan Carter turned his attention to the weapon he had so expertly disarmed. With the quiet focus of a seasoned professional, he inspected the pistol, noting details invisible to the untrained eye. It was a modified CZ-75B, a weapon favored by extremist groups for its reliability and ease of concealment. Nathan's gloved fingers moved over the firearm with deliberate care, identifying custom grips, a filed serial number, and a worn barrel that spoke of extensive, real-world use. Each mark, each alteration, told a story, and Nathan could read it as clearly as any open book. This was no random act by a disturbed individual. This was the calculated move of someone tied to an organized, dangerous ideology. When Detective Inspector Rachel Morgan approached, Nathan provided a concise yet thorough analysis, pointing out the weapon's illegal modifications and its likely origins. His calm, precise briefing helped law enforcement immediately narrow their investigation. Thanks to his experience and unwavering composure, a larger threat was uncovered, one that might have otherwise slipped through unnoticed. In that moment, Nathan proved that the true strength of a royal guard lies not just in ceremony, but in sharp intellect and relentless vigilance. As calm gradually returned to the courtyard, the true weight of what had transpired began to settle over the gathered witnesses. They had not merely observed a ceremonial figure standing in polished uniform. They had seen a living embodiment of vigilance, courage, and unwavering discipline. Nathan Carter's actions reminded all who watched that the Royal Guards are far more than a tradition. They are protectors, trained to react with precision and grace when true danger emerges. In a world where symbols are often dismissed as relics of the past, Nathan demonstrated that the traditions they uphold are built on very real foundations of sacrifice, readiness, and strength. His swift, controlled response preserved not just lives, but the dignity of a centuries-old institution dedicated to service above self. For those who witnessed it, and for those who would hear the story later, the message was clear. True honor lies not in rigid ceremony alone, but in the courage to defend what matters when no one expects it. And in Nathan Carter's unshakable posture, long after the sirens faded, the spirit of duty and resilience stood tall, silent, watchful, and enduring.